Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Data Do's and Don'ts, activating first-party data across digital domains. My name is Evelyn Mitchell. I'm a senior analyst at Insider Intelligence, and I'm joined by a very special panel. We have Bridget Barron, Director of Global CRM and Customer Growth at Elf Beauty, Chris O'Brien, Senior Vice President at M&T Bank, and Christine Gramier, Head of Solutions at LiveRamp. We'd also like to thank LiveRamp for making this panel possible. Before we begin, let us know where you're tuning in from. You can do that by using the chat window to the right of this video feed, and most importantly, ask us questions. So with that, let's get started. So you have first-party data, but harnessing that data is not as simple as having it. So what did you have to do your first-party data to prepare it for activation? Let's start with Bridget.
Awesome. Yeah, so there was a whole process that we went through at ELF, and we're a small company, so it was a big undertaking to get all of our first-party data from all of our different sources into one place. We really started that journey with finding a customer data platform, or a CDP, and really housing everything from our anonymous data that we kind of collect on the website to all of our different first-party sources from loyalty, customer service, orders, and so on. We had to focus on identity resolution. That was kind of the biggest thing for us, understanding where we were prioritizing different data sources and how we were going to kind of merge all of our consumer records into getting one single view of the consumer. And consumers can be inconsistent. And so I think what we wanted to do is, if someone told us they had dry skin in this experience, but elsewhere they had oily skin, I think we wanted to understand how to merge that all together to create a really primary source of truth, and then activate upon that. Another thing for us was timing. So data needs to be refreshed. You don't want to use stale data or ages of a consumer in your activations that are multiple years old. And so we really wanted to make sure that we are actively refreshing this data, not using anything that is stale and outdated. And then I think lastly in this process was really having a system of measurement in place. So we use a lot of control groups. That can be tricky in the paid media landscape, but there are other things we do, KPIs that are a little bit more predictive, so we can kind of get an initial read on a new customer instead of waiting to see how their behavior looks over time. So it's definitely, I think, an ongoing journey. We're never fully done with this, but it's been a process.
Chris, do you have anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, I think Bridget made a lot of really, really great points. And when I talk to people about this, other practitioners and who are on that journey that Bridget kind of talked about, right? Like thinking about it as a journey, I think is important, right? And sequencing the work. And one of the things I urge people to do is really think hard about, right, when you're thinking about activation, where are you activating it, right? And working backwards from the activation point and really developing and defining your use cases that are going to help you drive business outcomes. And once you do that, it makes it a lot easier to determine which data sets that you need and how you can put them together such that you can activate them in the channels that matter for your business. I think one of the things that we've seen is an explosion of channels, right? Like when I started, there was a lot of advertising channels out there, certainly, but there's just been an explosion, right? Every year, there's one or two channels that get added just in the walled garden social media space. And so, again, I think it's just important to define what are the activation channels today and what do we think they're going to be in the future, and then work backwards from there. And that helps you to really define, what data do you need in these profiles that you're going to be activating.
This week, I actually was just saying I got to have another conversation with Heineken about their efforts around their first-party data capture. And one of the key things that we talked about was quality. Not all first-party data capture needs to be about quantity. Right now, I think everyone is chasing this need to want to get more and more and more. We know that our third-party cookies are becoming less and less reliable. So we really see so much value in our first-party data asset. We have to be really careful not to just chase quantity, and really make sure as we're capturing data from different sources. Bridget, you called out some of the key places that you all source your first-party data from. Make sure you're connecting to, as you're bringing that data in from these different places, these different touch points where you're capturing the engagement with consumers. Really try to make sure you're also monitoring, are those different sources actually high quality? And that high quality can connect to both appending data to it. So sometimes that can mean licensing some data to attach to your first party data to make sure that you're validating who they are and cleaning them up with identity resolution, and then connecting it to that validation of measuring in market. So if you've captured data from some different places, make sure you're measuring that through to see if that's still a good place to keep getting first party data. We were talking about some brands in different categories, really trying to source first party data from anywhere and everywhere, from social, from events, from in-store, and so really try to connect that data capture to quality so that you know where to keep going after those consumers.
Awesome. Bridget, you mentioned bringing a CDP into the fold. I'd love to hear more about how your tech stacks, respectively, changed to accommodate better use of your first-party data, and who are the essential partners in your first-party data strategy. Let's start with Chris.
Yeah, I think it has been an evolution and a journey, just like we were talking about in the first question, and it's really followed consumer behavior and also like the reality of the situation, right? Given privacy concerns, you had called out earlier just the deprecation of third-party cookies, right? And we've had a lot of guidance and some delays from some of the destinations like Google on that deprecation, but really preparing for an ID first world. And so moving away from some of the technologies like data management platforms or DMPs that we had in the past into more identity based platforms. And that's where, first party data and CDPs become so important. And I think as any big enterprise, right, we're a customer of a lot of different brands and vendors, and we work with a lot of them, right? So some of the big enterprise clouds, the Adobes, the Salesforces of the world, and then also, right, folks like LiveRamp and other best-in-class point solutions across the stack. So it's a big, complex stack that we manage, as you can imagine, as a large enterprise. But there's a lot of different partners that help us to deliver these customers the best experiences possible.
Bridget, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, definitely. I touched on our customer data platform earlier, but I would say in addition to having that central location to house the data, the key, kind of changes we made in our tech stack were around one, kind of the data collection tools, things that we were doing on our site to, bring that data into our systems, and then our loyalty program. We made a bunch of changes. We kind of moved on to a new tech stack for our loyalty program because that is really the richest source of data for us. And then I think, our essential partners are really, in addition to the data collection, kind of all of our marketing automation tools. So not just the ways that we're activating in paid media, but also the ways that we're activating the data on our website, on our different CRM channels. So those are, kind of all of those pieces are really integral and work together. And then, I think this hasn't been mentioned yet, but privacy changes, I think, are something that impacts our tech stack and our processes a lot. For a smaller company, managing GDPR, CCPA changes, so consumers kind of requesting data deletion and making sure we're being compliant there, have been something that we've had to really stay on top of and think about how we're evolving and handling those requests. So I think it's two-pronged. Like, it's just as important to think about the hygiene and the compliance around our data strategy as it is to think about how we're activating it and who the partners are there, because you can't do one without the other.
And I just to pile right on there to Bridget's comments, the evolution of what, like, maybe, and I hate to say this because it'll keep us all employed, but it is so hard to keep up with the changing technology landscape so fast. But the choices that we may have made in the last 2 or 3 years about the technology that was best to serve us in that context does seem to be changing pretty quickly. And looking forward to the next 2 to 5 years, I think the thing that we see really fascinating is the concept of your CDP and your known activation channels really coming so much closer to being owned by your in-house IT departments, your in-house customer data warehouse teams. As a vendor, we're here to support you. We want to have technology you can use, but I think we are watching the space change, and we're definitely participating in this place where you used to just send us all your data. We would give you managed apps. We might even be collecting some of the data for you, and we're really watching and participating in a change to a lot of times what I think of as embedded apps. Let's go to your data with our technology. Let's help you have a single view of the customer, and then let us help you activate from that, instead of having 20 copies of your data in 20 different technology components, all over the ad tech ecosystem. So I talk about the bringing together of marketing technology and ad tech to mad tech, and really bringing that all much closer to your data. So I'm excited for that evolution on the horizon.
I love that.
I'll just add to that. I think that's. Oh, go ahead, Evelyn. Sorry.
Oh, I was complimenting Christine's portmanteau there. Mad tech. I love that.
Yeah, that was good. I think, Christine, you made a lot of good points there, and I think that's really, really important, right? And it is the move that I'm seeing too, right? Is having the apps or the semantic layer that you all are so good at building, right? That product solution layer, and that can live on, right, a zero copy architecture, right? We'll never get to. I mean, it's a holy grail, I think, right, to get to zero copy architecture, but ultimately that's the way that we need to move, and it needs to come closer to all of what Bridget talked about, right? Like global privacy and preference, and then that's managed, right, internally on internally managed, right, cloud hybrid type data architecture, and instead of sending, right, copies of our data and needing to refresh them to all these different ad tech vendors, right, really trying to leverage the vendors for what they're best at, which is building those app or semantic layers. I think that's a really important point.
Excellent. All right. Next, let's talk about where you're using first-party data. What platforms, what channels, and why don't we start with Bridget?
Yeah. So, all the usual suspects when it comes to the kind of big media destinations, Google, Facebook, but then TikTok is also huge for us, Snap, Reddit, Pinterest. And then we've also started, testing a little bit with our retailer DSPs. We are very widely distributed at Elf or at Target, Amazon, Ulta, Walmart. And so, we're starting to play a little bit within the Target, Amazon DSP, and seeing how we can leverage our first party data there. And then of course we're using our first party data in our own digital channels. So on our actual brand site, we test a lot of different content and messages based on our first party data and certain audiences that users fall into. We're using it to inform our dynamic real-time product recommendations as well. And we're using it to personalize, kind of all of our user journeys, even off the site, email, SMS, push, in-app. And here, we're really relying, again, a lot on A/B testing, control groups to understand the lift that we're driving. And I think one thing that's really key in how we use the first party data, I talked about measurement before, and measurement, of course, understanding the value you're getting out of it is a little trickier in the paid media landscape. In our own channels, we're really diligent about that, making sure that we are using control groups, that we're testing. And I think we're trying to be very transparent with our audience. So I think a lot of brands do this well. They'll put, beneath their personalization, hey, did we get this right? Complete your profile to get better recommendations. So being transparent that you're using their data to power the experience, but also inviting them in to kind of make that experience better. So there's a lot of things we're doing. I think we're always learning and testing over time, and new channels pop up constantly where we want to activate.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, Christine. Oh, go ahead, Christine.
Sorry, I was just going to jump in and say, I think some of the biggest growth and change we see in this space is really around thinking about using your first party data, even if potentially it's lookaliked and scaled sometimes at LiveRamp, in the TV and video channels. So I think historically we've really thought of those TV and video budgets as as something that was sort of the non-targetable media. It was just the reach media, and especially as budgets are being crunched with some economic scrutiny, we are seeing that that more and more digitally activated, highly targeted video channels are really accelerating quickly.
Chris, what have you seen?
Yeah, I think that's right, Christine. We're definitely excited about ID-based video platforms, leveraging things like YouTube, but then now, right, the opportunity for connected TV, I think is huge, right? And you made a really good point that might have been seen traditionally as sort of like top of funnel brand awareness, but now you can do things with ID-based platforms like sequencing at an audience level, which are really exciting for a lot of our programs. We're not in as many social channels as I think ELF probably is, but LinkedIn is a big one for us that, LiveRamp can help us to connect with, right, to get better reach and addressability, as well as, other platforms that we like to test, right? I think there's a lot that are interesting and useful to get better reach and really be able to, talk to those people where they are, right? M&T exists in a much broader ecosystem, and so it's important to acknowledge that. And then just some of the traditional channels, right? Like we see really good results with email and direct mail. And so it's just figuring out how you use those and complement those channels with some of the ID-based digital channels that we've been talking so much about.
Absolutely. All right. I'd like to kind of think more about, I think we've mentioned this before, but how acquisition strategies are being built now around first-party data as third-party cookie data becomes less available. And Chris, would you like to start us off on this one?
Yes, I think we've hit this one pretty good. So let's try to maybe put a bow on it. I think as we've moved away from cookie-based advertising over the last couple of years, right, we had an advantage where I think we were heavy in things like the Google stack and Facebook, so they lent themselves to first-party data strategies, which was, I think, a really good thing for us in terms of getting this sequencing right. But I'd only add that I think that it's really important for people to focus on their audiences. Whether you're building audiences and doing that sort of profiling in a DMP and it's based on cookies, right? We're not doing anything different. It's just a different technology, right? So moving away from the client side, cookie-based technology and moving more to server-side ID-based technologies, but still being focused on our audiences, right? So whether we're building those audiences and defining those profiles off cookies, or more durable identities and first-party data, I think it's the same strategy. It's just built on different technology.
Absolutely. Christine, do you have anything to add?
I think I'll maybe take a slightly a new point. We have talked about how to go about acquiring your new customers' first-party data in a couple of the real direct ways, like from your site, from your direct engagements. The thing that I am super excited about as a new area is really second or third-party data partnerships as another approach to think about. So if you're out there, Bridget, you mentioned some of those great retailer partnerships you have. If you really think about them as if we get together and we put our data together, of course, in a buzzword you're all hearing, sorry, Evelyn, is a clean room technology of some kind. You can bring together your data. You can identify shared value use cases, things you're both going to benefit from, and you activate. It's a great opportunity for you to look at that as a way to grow your own first party data sets. Think about those partnerships that you have with your retailers or with partners for all kinds of different reasons, co-op marketing. We're finding that reasons for partnerships are really kind of endless, but you bring together that data, you define a mutually beneficial partnership for you and that other company, and you can really think about it as going out and seeking high value potential prospects and then ultimately landing them in your first party data set if you can do good things for them.
Christine, thank you for bringing up clean rooms. Actually, that's our first live question that we had come in. And if you are playing buzzword bingo, there you go. We have clean rooms for you. Let's start with Bridget for this one. What do you believe is the value of clean rooms? Like, will they be critical in response to emerging data and privacy trends? And Christine just touched on this, but what's your view, Bridget?
Yeah, I think that, of course, over time, clean rooms are going to be more important. I think for us, understanding how we can possibly share or not share, or can we share our data with some of our retail partners, that's, a kind of new territory that we need to test into. But, for us, I think we're trying to really build our own really kind of strong first party database to prepare for the future, whatever that might be. We are in a unique position where e.l.f. is a inherently D2C brand. We're of the top 5 mass beauty players. We're really the one that's been playing in the D2C e-com space the longest. So we have a natural advantage of a great first party database. And so more recently, we've changed our loyalty program to be truly omni-channel. This is pretty unique in the beauty space, where we want to reward consumers beyond just shopping our brand site, whether they're shopping Amazon, Target, Ulta. And then the trade-off is that, when they participate in the loyalty program and shop those channels, we're in turn getting some of those insights and kind of understanding, where their behavior is outside of our own ecosystem. And so, of course, there's a lot more we're doing, but, Christine probably has a lot more to say on this topic.
I don't know. I don't know if I need to pile on too much, but I think the concepts of clean rooms, we think, are, as you said, Bridget, just really getting started. And so evaluating the use cases that potentially can serve you are really the main thing to go after and really unpack, and building audiences with your partners, and then really looking to do great closed loop measurement are the two most low hanging fruit for folks to begin to explore.
Excellent. Chris, do you happen to have anything else to add, or did they cover off on everything?
I think they covered it pretty well. The only thing I would add is there's a lot of value to be found in dependencies and in the margins, and whether that's a data strategy that is a second party where you have a partnership, or that's internal. There's a lot to be said for working across teams, and we find a lot of value, not necessarily in a clean room context, but building data partnerships internally, with maybe non-obvious teams, and then really working across those teams, working through the dependencies, and being able to deliver, the kinds of customer experiences that we didn't in the past because we were more siloed in nature.
Data silos. That tends to be one of the big challenges that I hear in activating first-party data, is figuring out how to bring together just your internal data sources and look in places that you may not have looked before. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'd love if we could talk a little bit more about some challenges that you all have faced in this space. And actually, maybe we can start with Christine. Talk me through the biggest challenge that you've encountered clients facing in activating their first-party data.
I think the area that we are seeing folks get stumped on the most, I think the basic, I've got some first party data, let me get it to where it needs to be. That's not too hard. The part where we really are seeing folks really take a pause and have to think for a little more time and energy is around privacy. So Bridget called it out a little bit earlier. Really, it takes an investment to think about for your company, what is that quote unquote privacy council. Almost all of our customers are beginning to create this team of some kind that involves legal, maybe some data ethics, definitely media and marketing folks are needed, and really like forming what that right group looks like, and then really making sure they're participatory, they're understanding the use cases, and they're really running with your business. That is one of the things that I think that our brands, pubs, retailers all the way around the market need to lean into quickly. I always hate it when we have a customer who's like put off the engagement with that privacy team, and then they get to the end of a workflow or a use case or something they're about ready to kick off, and the privacy team comes in and really says, no, there's a lot more work we need to do. So engage early. Often lean into participating with your legal and privacy folks, because it's a challenge we see a lot of folks hitting, and I think it's really preventable if we just all invest the time and make it part of our day-to-day.
Absolutely. Chris or Bridget, bring us home. Let's talk through a solution to a challenge.
Yeah, I can go. I think we've talked a lot about the technology portion of this, but I think that once you have all your data in one place, there's some especially if you're just starting out and you're a smaller company, there's some organizational changes I think that have to take place, because it really is, the activation is a collaborative effort between whatever business team, CRM, data, whoever owns your first party data, and who's maintaining that, and then the paid media teams, agency teams, whoever's activating on it. And I think that there was a temptation, and in our beginning of our journey, kind of a lot of going after very granular different segments. And I think we had to take a step back, figure out who was involved in the strategy, and align on some, key macro audiences or macro segments that we wanted to test different messaging or go after first. And that helped us also, kind of inform our content roadmap, content creative, being able to personalize and activate on these different audiences. That's always a challenge. And so trying to target all these little kind of piecemeal, granular segments of customers is not the best place to start. I think if that would be my advice, if you are getting started on this journey or a smaller organization, kind of figure out those 3, 4, whatever, 5 key audiences and what the message is against each of those. So that was a change we made. And I think, another challenge was probably gaps in data, making it not worth activating upon certain audiences because the data was spotty. And so, part of that was introducing product finders, quizzes, loyalty experiences to start to fill those gaps and make it, actually worth it to activate on our psychographic data, and not just use the transactional data.
Absolutely. Well, Bridget, Chris, and Christine, thank you so much again for this great content and answering all the questions from our audience. We really appreciate it. Thanks also to our audience for tuning in. Next, join us for a very special Ask the Analysts panel. To go there, click on the tab below the video feed that says Next Session. Enjoy the rest of our summit and have a wonderful weekend.